Hey everybody, Mike King with Profiling Evil. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. Hopefully I have the audio working and everything. I just wanted to take a minute. I've been really troubled by a homicide, domestic violence homicide that occurred in my hometown a few days ago. In fact, it happened on Saturday, April 3rd, just before Easter. And a woman named Mindy Elmore was murdered by a former estranged boyfriend. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this for a minute is because the number of victims grew exponentially as this thing unfolded. And I wanted to just spend a minute and talk about domestic violence and remind you that it is something that can impact anyone, regardless of how perfect your life might seem. There are opportunities where this can spill over into your life. And I wanted to start off by just sharing a piece from the news as this thing was unfolding, because just shortly after the suspect in this case murdered Mindy, who happened to be going to the local grocery store in the afternoon, the day before Easter, to pick up just a couple more things to make Easter very special for her children and family. Mindy, her favorite holiday was Easter. And I was just really, this one really affected me. And I wanted to just share a couple of things. Shortly after the suspect in this case, who quit dating Mindy a year earlier, but couldn't give her up. She had found a new love and had moved on, but he couldn't. The suspect tracked her down, murdered her in the parking lot by shooting her multiple times, and then fled the area. Police were able to pursue him and eventually caught him in this neighborhood. And I want to just play a little bit from a local news reporter. So I have to zoom, as she approached the area where this happened.
He's in that white shirt there. And there's some neighbors here who are actually kind of looking at the situation through binoculars. And they say he's been holding a gun to his head, to his chest throughout the whole 4 hours. Can you see what he's doing now? They say right hand or left hand? He's on the phone? No. They say the gun's in his right hand. I'm sorry, I know it's shaky, but it's because I'm really zoomed in. So go ahead.
The phone is in his left.
Okay. He's been holding a phone throughout this. Now, the latest update we got from police is that they're currently, they say he's armed and they're negotiating with him. They said that he is contained. We reached out to figure out what exactly contained means. Haven't really heard anything yet.
Now, the reason I brought this up, folks, and the reason I'm showing even this little video clip is because this suspect pulled into someone's driveway that was not affiliated with this event at all, had nothing to do with it. As he drove around, he ran out of options and he pulled into the driveway of this home and put the gun up to his own head. And then that started a several-hour standoff with police. Eventually, the suspect in the case shot himself. And before he could die, police rendered aid. They saved his life and got him to a local hospital. Now, I want to just go a little bit further and kind of paint this story a little further now. From there, let me just pull up a screen here that I want to share with you. From there, once the suspect shot himself, of course, Mindy is dead. Her boyfriend, who she had created a really, sounds like a wonderful relationship with, found her. Now, just before he met Mindy, he lost his wife to cancer. And at about 6 to 12 hours later, depending on when he actually found out, he started conversing on Facebook. And this is the second area that I thought was so important. Number one is a complete stranger's driveway is where this suspect pulled in and barricaded himself, and police ended up in a hours-long standoff with him before he shot himself. That family was impacted. Mindy, of course, and her children were impacted. Their extended families were impacted. And now her boyfriend, this Clyde Connolly, at 6 hours to 12 hours after he finds out the love of his life has been murdered, starts to share his feelings on Facebook. And of course, the image to the right is the killer, Seth Gibson. And he writes that, you know, you took my Mindy from me. And then he starts talking, and we can see his comments here. He calls Gibson a coward. He says, I didn't take her from you, and talking about the fact that she left Gibson and became, fell in love with Connolly. She said, you never deserved her. Then he goes, I hope there's an afterlife and that she's with her mom. But then this is where it starts to get really frightening. He says down on the second asterisk, I failed her and everyone who loved her. I should have been there. So we feel this guilt that he had no control over, but he started to feel this incredible, immense depression. This is area number 2, where I think we need to have kind of our antennas up when we see these kinds of things. He goes on and says, this is absolutely the worst pain I have ever had to feel, worse than losing my wife to terminal cancer. We can see that down here. And then now this is, again, 3 o'clock in the morning. If you look at the time, 3 a.m. By 3:15, again, this is just 6 hours to 12 hours after the murder. This loved one is now saying, I'm leaving now. He's starting to talk about suicide. He then goes on and says, I haven't been able to stop crying about this. Now, in his family's defense, this is 3 o'clock in the morning. People are not usually looking at Facebook, but folks, all of us see times when we see our friends in crises. And I guess I'm just so compelled by this that I wanted to just share this. 30 minutes after that, he says, I'm sorry. He says, Seth, the killer, won. And he says, I'm going to be better off if I'm no longer around here. And then a few moments later, he said, you know, I'm going to leave my phone here because I know you could track me with my phone. And he's taken some pills, and he actually writes in there that he has enough medications to kill an elephant. He says, I hope I can make it to the tree that Mindy and I loved. And there he dies as a result of the medication. Second time that someone may have, I don't think so in this case, but may have known what was going on. Now, 2 days later, the suspect in this case died from the self-inflicted gunshot wound that he had. Absolutely no winners in these kinds of cases. And what I wanted to do by just chatting with you for a moment, folks, is to remind you that domestic violence is real and it is punishing. And if you will think back, a few months ago, we did a show on Profiling Evil about, first, the architecture of a narcissist. And if you remember in that show, we had Dr. Ramani on, and we talked through some of the things that the victims who are dealing with a narcissist will go through. And there's some great counsel in there. I just wanted to remind you and push you back to look at that and maybe watch with Dr. Ramani that episode. And I know I continually say her name. I get it off a little bit, and please forgive me for that. I continue working on that. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is another show that we did with a former police officer in the UK and a PhD psychologist, Dr. Jane Monckton Smith, on what is called the 8 stages of domestic violence homicide. And I wanted to just remind you all too that that is an incredibly valuable video. And I hope that you'll go back and look at that. These tragedies extend way beyond the Mindys who are murdered as a result of an estranged boyfriend or husband or something else. In this particular case, I want to just retrace this quickly. The victim died of gunshot wounds. The suspect ended up in someone's driveway, completely unrelated to the entire episode, and impacted that family and that neighborhood with a very horribly dangerous situation that eventually ended up in the suspect barricading himself and then attempting to take his own life by gunshot wounds. From there, it continued to spiral as Mindy's children were notified of the assault, as her family learned that she had been murdered, as a community learned that she had been murdered. And again, this is a day before Easter, such a special day for Christians to think about things about death and living. Not only is the community impacted, but now her new husband to be, lover, friend, companion is so overcome that he starts to threaten suicide in the messaging that he's placing online. And again, in the family's defense and all of the friends' defense, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's really hard to know what people are up to. But he started sending out messages. And I wanted to just send to you a message that it really is important that we have the courage to step up when we see something going weird. If we see someone struggling, call the local police and let them know and ask them to do a welfare check or something else. If it's your loved one, make sure that they're getting the mental health counseling that they need. Again, think about visiting previous shows on Profiling Evil, Dr. Ramani and the Architecture of a Narcissist, and also Dr. Jane Moncton Smith on the 8 stages of domestic violence homicide. This is a real problem. We need to be vigilant in this, and we need to pray for those who suffer as a result of it. I am so grateful that you would just take a quick moment to join with me in this, and I hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you on the next event. Thank you.